Chris in Long Island, New York. Welcome to Coast. Say hi to David Wilcock.
Hey, Jimmy. Hey, Dave. How you guys doing?
Doing good, Chris.
Well, I had a question for David in terms of reading his new book, The Five Mysteries, which I'm very enjoying very much.
Thanks.
And one of the chapters was Nikola Tesla, the Pete Peterson of Nikola Tesla Black Ops.
Yep.
One of them is about Black Jesus, where there's a sentient being appearing in Africa.
Yep.
And I just want to know if you know any more information you would share with us, because I thought that was very captivating to me. And I just wanted more information on it.
Yeah, the Black
Thank you, Chris.
story. The Black Jesus story was probably one of the most shocking things I ever heard. It came from my insider, Jacob, I call him that in the book, who actually was working for the Rothschilds and still does, and also is a whistleblower who doesn't really do what they want, but continues to work for them because he feels like there's some very serious extraterrestrial threats to Earth, and that what they're doing is very necessary to protect us. So the story goes that in the 1960s, there was a black man in Africa who came in with abilities complementary to those of Jesus. And he was performing miracles. He was starting to get people to listen to what he had to say. And the cabal tried to kill him, and they could shoot him in the head and his skull would just regenerate and the flesh would grow back, and he was fine. And so the crazy story that I heard, and remember, I was told at the time that if I disclosed this that I would be killed, and I ended up putting it in the book anyway. The story was that this guy, they finally said, okay, we're going to bring you to the United Nations and share your message with the world. Let's get you on this flight. They bring him on this flight, and instead of bringing him to the United Nations, they shot him repeatedly, and then actually had some kind of meat grinder device, and basically like a bandsaw, I guess, and sawed up his body into a whole bunch of pieces, put him in these very like radioactive shielded containers, and then had all these fighter jets dock with the plane and fly his body parts to all corners of the world, where then these containers turned them into ash. And they thought that maybe this would defeat him, like that his body somehow, the tissue was necessary. So if they destroyed all the tissue in all these places across the world, maybe they could defeat him. Well, he then regenerated in their offices and was fully fine, fully intact. But the sad part is that he said, you guys so badly do not want me to be here that I am not going to be able to do any more. You're going to get what you want, but bear in mind that in the future, many others like me will be coming, and when they do, you will not be able to stop us.
Wow. Wow.
Well, that is all I know. Unfortunately,
right.
There's nothing more to the story than that.
Shout out to David Wilcock. Shout out to David Wilcock. Peace and love to the family. This is the Darius Corbin Mystery School, the home of the esoteric and metaphysical knowledge. Shout out to David Wilcock. Check out some of David Wilcock's old work, man. The Synchronicity. He has a lot of great books out there, man. Studied his work at a very, very, very young age. I did. He goes deep into the reptilians, the cabal, a lot of deep stuff. Now, David just said there was nothing more to that story, and that is based on a true story, by the way. Shout out to my family out there. This is going to be a very powerful presentation. I know it's going to go viral. This is going to be a very important presentation because what you just heard, family, is based on a true story. There was a black man in Africa in the 1960s who displayed the same ability that Christ did 2,000 years ago. You're going to see that this man was very, very powerful. Indeed. You're going to see that part. He was for the people. He was Christ returned, as was promised in the biblical times. This man was Christ returned. Nothing evil about it. He came with the same abilities as the Christ. Pure-hearted man who the colonizers kept trying to kill, and he will come back to life. Now, most of us, shout out to my people all across the world, but most of us watching are probably in the United States right now. We are the Western civilization. We are called the Western civilization. And my family in this Western civilization, let me first off say, we have not been privileged to everything that is known all around the world. Because the one who has conquered this world made sure that certain ones did not know their true identity, who they are, where they are from. Before I get started, I just want to say this. 10 years now, I've been on this spiritual journey. Studying research. I'm at an age now where I can teach. And in the beginning of my journey, one of my biggest questions was, does racism play a major part in this very existence? Spiritually, of course we see it physically, but does racism spiritually play a part? Terrestrial and non-terrestrial. And through 10 years of research and family, I can say that race has played a major part in our existence. Now, to all my family, every skin color out there, the only thing that's going to get us into the future, into higher dimensions, into higher vibrations, to higher realms, is a unified consciousness. That's what the Christ energy is all about. Us being unified. We are all one. You live your individual lives, but together we are one. We are one unified consciousness that comes from the Supreme Source. Understand that. So to get to where we need to be in the future with the Mother and Father God and us within this Christ energy, we must be unified. But within saying that, we cannot ignore how racism has played a part so much that it hasn't just affected the cosmos, it has affected the earth. It just hasn't affected earth, it has affected the cosmos. Now I know what you're waiting for. And let's get to it. David Wilcox said that was it. That was the end of the story of that black man from Africa. Well, I'm here today on the Davis Corbett Mystery School to break down who this black man was. And for all my melanated people out there who have been through the oppression, the suffering, trying to figure out why every time they turn on TV, black man being down with this, black man being tortured with this, black man being killed with this. The black and the brown community are going through this. The indigenous people are going through this. You're going to hopefully get an idea by the time I'm done why this is going on. You're about to learn about a powerful man you may never even heard of. Christ never left you. Are y'all ready? It's going to be a good one tonight. Simeon Toko, black man. Get ready for it, family. Simeon Toko, black man. This is Simeon Toko. You got your pen and pad? Because it's about to be a good one. Simeon Toko. Simeon Toko. Simeon Toko. Now, for those who watched my presentation, Jesus was Black Christ. I did it a couple months ago, maybe. I told you about Simon Kimbangu. Simon Kimbangu was to Simeon Toko what John the Baptist was to Jesus, what Elijah was to Elisha in the Old Testament. Let me say that again before I go in. This is very important because we never left the Bible. Simeon Toko was Jesus. Simon Kimbangu, who I did a presentation on not too long ago, was the John the Baptist. Just like Elijah was the John the Baptist to Elisha's who Jesus was in the Old Testament. Do you get what I'm saying? Was that too confusion? These were men who were messengers and Christ's energy bearers. These men are still around today. You had Jesus and John the Baptist. You had Elijah and you had Elisha from the Old Testament. And what I'm saying is Simeon Toko was the Jesus and the Elisha. Simon Kimbangu was the Elijah and the John the Baptist, messengers who prophesied the coming of the Christ. So if you watch my presentation on Simon Kimbangu, he was the messenger for what was coming after him. They both did the miracles of Christ, miraculous miracles. But let's go in. Let's go in. This is about to get amazing. This is about to get amazing. You got your pen and pad? You ready? Let's go in. Christian churches and colonial governments try to eradicate African spiritual masters. Let me give you that title before we go in. African Avatars and the Third Secret of Fatima. Fatima. Oh boy, this is going to be a good one. African Avatars and the Third Secret of Fatima. Let's go in. Christian churches and colonial governments try to eradicate African spiritual masters even into the late 20th century, but never destroyed their influence. I'm going to read that again. Christian churches and colonial governments tried to eradicate African spiritual masters even into the late 20th century, but never destroyed their influence. Few Westerners, remember that's me and you, United States of America, us Western civilizationers, few Westerners are aware of the spectacular religious activity that has been thundering with incalculable exuberance through the hearts of millions of Africans in our just past century. Men and women have been seeing visions after visions, sign after sign, and wonder after wonder. There are national holidays commemorating miracles not from centuries ago by some old saint whose paint has long since peeled, but within the last few decades and witnessed by thousands of ordinary citizens still walking among us. So what they're saying is you ain't got to go back to 2,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago and hear about these Greek, Roman, European people who have done things of great statures. You can hear about certain African avatars who perform miracles within the 100 years. Within the last 100 years is what it's saying. Let's continue going on. January 4th, 1959, witnesses attest that many cherubim and seraphim emerged and held off Belgian colonial army. I told you this was going to be a serious presentation. To my melanated people, to people all over the world, but to my melanated people who feel like they've been stomped down, who feel like they've been oppressed, who feel like they are greater, but they haven't been told how great they are. This is what the mystery school is about. Unlocking your greatness so you can unlock your greatness. Yeah, now I think you heard it, but I'll read it again. January 4th, 1959, witnesses attest that many cherubim and seraphim emerged and held off Belgian colonial army. Cherubim and seraphim. If you have a pen, I know some of you know what it is, but once again, this is the mystery school. This is what we're teaching here. Classes in session. Cherubim, Cherubim. Seraphim, Seraphim. And I'm going to read that one more time. January 4th, 1959, witnesses attest that many, and I quote, cherubim and seraphim, end quote, emerged and held off Belgian colonial army. Now, for those who are theologians in the church, Bible thumpers, you know that cherubim and seraphim are what? Indeed, angels that are in the Bible, angels that come from heaven. Citizens of, I want to make sure I'm saying this right, Leopoldville, and that's Leopoldville, citizens of Leopoldville saw an army of about 1,000 angels, and it says non-terrestrials, very muscular bodies imposing these human-looking beings, but with supernatural powers, demonstrating an extraordinary force. For example, a witness saw one of them on the road sweeping a 5-ton truck with one hand. Are y'all with me? This is not a game. This is true story. Wake up. We are here now. This is no time for games. Make this go viral. This is real. This is your African roots. This is why every time a Messiah came, especially in the 60s and the 70s when we had Martin Luther King, when we had Huey Newton, Malcolm X, this is why they were targeting the black messiahs, because they had one in Africa. These human-looking beings, but with supernatural powers, demonstrating an extraordinary force. For example, a witness saw one of them on the road sweeping a 5-ton truck with one hand. Belgian soldiers opened fire on these angels, once again it says non-terrestrials, but to no effect. Colonial army was in a panic and disorder. Angels disappeared as suddenly as had appeared. According to the African natives, that day, Simeon Toko, and I quote, had unleashed his army. 4th of January is the day of celebration today in Kinshasa, and that's Kinshasa, Kinshasa. Kinshasa. I want to make sure I put some respect on that. Now, my phone's a little bit cracked, so I can't tell if we're on 17 minutes or what. I hope y'all are paying attention. I haven't even touched the surface yet of what I'm about to go in on. This was a black man in the 1960s. You're going to find out in a minute why we haven't heard this story. Let's see how angry you get. How do you feel knowing that you are a divine being? You are spiritual in this flesh. The powers you have deep inside you can't even imagine. But they're there. They've just been suppressed by the same people who know who you are. This is going to get you mad. Some people might even shed a tear because I'm not even done yet. I am the divine messenger of Christ, here to wake up the Christ in you. Whatever, I'm going to read it again. I'm going to read it again. January 4th, 1959, witnesses attest that many cherubim and seraphim emerged and held off Belgian colonial army. Citizens of Leopoldville saw an army of about 1,000 angels, very muscular bodies imposing these human-looking beings, but with extraordinary force. For example, a witness saw one of them on the road sweeping a 5-ton truck with one hand. Belgian soldiers opened fire on these angels, but to no effect. Colonial army was in a panic and disorder. Angels disappeared as suddenly as had appeared. According to the African natives, that day, Simeon Toko, and I quote, had unleashed his army. 4th of January is the day of celebration today in Kinshasa. A year after this extraordinary event, Congo, Congo, in Africa, became an independent country. For the Belgians were forced to leave their rich colonies of Congo. And I'm going to keep on going. I know y'all with me. Let's see if you can see. Here's some more pictures. This is a black and white version, but you can find a color version on the internet. This is after they trying to cut this man up, cut them all up, and he rejuvenated back after they, them little big field tractors, you see, cutting the crops. They set him up. He was under that. Started it, cut him all to pieces. He rejuvenated in the scars. You can see the scars in color once you go on the internet. But this is real. He rejuvenated, came back to life and all that. True story. Whether you want to believe it or not, family. Just in case you want to know why the melanated ones have been suppressed. Why you don't know truly who you are. Because if you knew, oh, if you knew and you unified, oh my God. Let's keep on going. Are y'all with me? Some of y'all can shed tears, tears of joy, tears of whatever. It's not, this is your background. This is your ancestor, as you say. This is a true story. Some of you can get angry. Some of you can, be joyful. All the emotions, let go. Because this is a true story about a black man. Simeon Toko, and once again, if you haven't written that down, his name is Simeon, Simeon, Toko, Toko. Listen what I said here. Simeon Toko is a reincarnation of Simeon Kimbangu, who appeared before people in an apparitional body and in dream states while he was physically alive, and continues to do the same among certain selected people 17 years after his will and natural death. Let me say that again, because if you watch my other presentations like Jesus, Black Christ, you can find it, but it talks about Simon Kimbangu. Simon Kimbangu did miraculous things as well. Same thing. He did the same miracles. He brought a woman back to life. He did all this stuff. And the colonizers said this man was messing up their money because all the believers, they were leaving all the hospitals, and at least 17 million people, Africans, were coming to this man and getting healed. And he was the Christ energy back in the 1800s. We're talking about Simon Kimbangu. Simeon Tokyo was the reincarnation of Simon Kimbangu, because when he was alive, Simon Kimbangu said that he would reincarnate around 1918. 1918 was the year that Simon Tokyo was born. It also was the year that Simon Kimbangu's son was born as well. So, depending on who you talk to, either his son or Simon Tokyo is the reincarnation of Simon Kimbangu. You had John the Baptist, who was the messenger for Jesus, or the harbinger. Then you had Elijah, who was the messenger for Elijah. This is deep. So let's continue to go in. I thank y'all for being patient with me. Simon Tokyo, a reincarnation of Simon Kimbangu. Simon Tokyo appeared before people in an apparitional body and in dream states while he was physically alive, and listen, and continues to do the same among certain selected people 17 years after his willing natural death. At least one witness says that he personally killed this man quite professionally as a hired killer and saw him alive a few days later. Shout out to Ryan Coogler, Spike Lee. Who else we got? Tyler Perry, Jordan Peele. Shout out to my melanated film producers and all the aspired film producers who have not yet blossomed. There's a lot of movies going on out here. And these movies raise the consciousness of people. Like Avatar. You watch Avatar, man, something soul-wise connects with that movie, right? Imagine if we just got our funds together. And I think there had been like little movies that kind of did a little version of this movie, but not the money put into that, because it could be, major big screen. But imagine if somebody, everything I'm telling you right now, imagine if somebody put this into a movie and raised the consciousness of everybody. This true story about a black man from Africa who had the same abilities as Christ. I'm going to read that again. He appeared before people in an apparitional body, and in dream states while he was physically alive, and continues to do the same among certain selected people. 17 years after his willing natural death, at least one witness says that he personally killed this man, quite professionally, as a hired killer, and saw him alive a few days later. Can you imagine putting that work in? You a professional hired hitman. You killed this dude. You know you killed him. Next thing you know, you see him chilling around the block a few days later. Others still living at the time of this writing say they saw Tokyo physically slaughtered and watch him bring himself back to life before their astonished eyes. There is a very large body of testimony. Let me stop there for the people who may be watching and still thinking this can't be real. A black man who walked in the 1960s and had these miracles that was raising angels from the earth and defeating colonizers, getting killed time and time again and coming back to life? What? True. It's true. But can your psyche deal with that? Let's keep on going. Others still living at the time of this writing said they saw Toko physically slaughtered and watched him bring himself back to life before their astonished eyes. There is a very large body of testimony of which only a little has yet been recorded or written down from eyewitnesses. Here's another. This is a black man. I'm going to keep showing you pictures. You can go on the internet, type his name up after this or in between, whatever. And you can see this black man. Simeon Toko. May 13, 1970. Oh, this is the good part. Now you're about to understand why us in the United States of America and some of us all over have not heard of Simeon Tokyo. Hope you get ready for those who rock with the Vaticans and for those who follow religion passionately and faithfully and don't do your soul searching. Listen up. May 13, 1917, the Lady of Fatima, Fatima. Now, if my recollection family, y'all can verify this. Fatima is the name of the Prophet Muhammad. Fatima is the name of the Prophet Muhammad in the Quran. May 13, 1917, the Lady of Fatima, Fatima, Portugal predicted the fall of Russia to communism, the end of the First World War, and the coming of the Second World War. John the 23rd, it's in numerals. John the 23rd ordered the third secret sealed up in a vault forever. The third secret of Fatima announces his birth, which occurred 9 months after her initial appearance. My Islamic family, you know who the Lady of Fatima is, Fatima, if not, research her. This story is also known, you can Google this story. The Lady Fatima, she's also known as Mother Mary in certain religions as well. In Islam, she is known as the Lady of Fatima, which is the Prophet Muhammad's daughter. She appeared amongst 3 kids in apparition in a spiritual form and gave these kids 3 prophecies. At first, the kids went to tell their parents and they didn't believe them until eventually the parents put with the kids and they seen this apparition. This is all a true story. Let me keep on going though. I don't want to steer my family off of what we were doing here tonight. Listen up, because y'all need to write this down. This is your history. And May 13, 1917, listen up. The Lady of Fatima, Portugal, predicted the fall of Russia to communism, the end of the First World War, and the second coming of the War. John the 23rd ordered the third secret, and that's Pope John. 23rd ordered the third secret sealed up in a vault forever. Listen to this. John the 23rd ordered the third secret sealed up in a vault, and I quote, forever. And I hope you guys are listening at 20-some minutes. John the 23rd ordered the third secret sealed up in a vault, and I quote, end quote, forever. Well, the third secret announces Simeon Toko's birth, which occurred 9 months after her initial appearance, and cites biblical passages that make a case that Simeon Toko was Christ's returned. God, I hope you guys out there are listening. Darn, I hope you're listening. To my melanated people, African Americans, blacks, all my people across the world, and to my people all colors, because it's nothing but love. We are a unified consciousness. We all come from the source. But how can we continue going on and denying the facts? You have a race that all they see within their color and their race is oppression. Their race has been set back. Their race has fell asleep and forgot who they were. There's a skit. You guys can Google the skit after you get done watching this. I think it's an SNL skit. I'm not really sure, but it's with the late great Richard Pryor. And Richard Pryor and two white guys are in this cave in Africa in Egypt, and I guess they're playing Egyptologist, but they're in there, and everybody's looking around the pyramids, and Richard Pryor finds this book, and as he's reading this book, he's like, "Oh my God, it's all black! It's all black!" Speaking about our history and it's all black people. It's as you notice, the two guys once they hear him saying this, and notice that they smooth clear out and lock him in there, with him only knowing about the true knowledge. If we only knew how true that was, and how religion and politics have done a great job suppressing the melanated race to the point that you don't have to worry about no other color coming to attack the melanated race, because now so much has been done that they will attack themselves before even unifying and coming together and realizing that they are greater. Now I'm going to read this yet again because I have time. For those who watch, they watch because we are now learning esoteric and metaphysical knowledge. I think it is important that you know about Simeon Toko. Make this video go viral, to my new generation out there. I hope you have your kids watching this so they can know that there was a man, their skin tone, their hue, that did the same things as Christ did. For those who watched my presentation, I told you about a man named Flavius Josephus, who was born 4 years after Jesus died, who gave the direct description of what Jesus looked like, and he said that Jesus was a short black man. He also was a black Jewish man. Let's go in. May 13, 1917, the Lady of Fatima, Portugal, predicted the fall of Russia to communism, the end of the First World War, and the coming of the Second World War. John the 23rd ordered the third secret to be sealed up in a vault forever. The third secret of Fatima announces the birth of Simeon Toko, which occurred 9 months after her initial appearance, and cites biblical passages that make a case that Simeon Toko was Christ's returned. Simeon Toko is the first among this raft of candidates to stand up to meticulous interpretations of biblical prophecies. Even the famous like lightning from east to west line, thought to mean that Christ appears somehow in a perpetual abstract, is covered by the Tokiists. And the Tokiists are, of course, the followers of Simon Tokyo. The appearance of the Virgin at Fatima was preceded by lightning flashing east to west every time. Let me read that again. Simeon Toko is the first among this raft of candidates to stand up to meticulous interpretations of biblical prophecies. Even, and all my biblical scholars, you know this, even the famous, and I quote, like lightning from east to west line, thought to mean that Christ appears somehow in a perpetual abstract, is covered by the Tokiists, who are the followers of Simeon Tokyo. The appearance of the Virgin at Fatima was preceded by lightning flashing east to west every time. Biblical prophecy fulfilled. Let's keep going. During that night of December 31st, my gosh, during the night of December 31st to January 1st, 1984, shout out to all my 1984 babies. Everybody who was born in 1984, all my 1984 men and women. I was born December 26, 1984. During the night of December 31st to January 1st, 1984, when the media announced the death of Simeon in Tokyo, see, we gotta start going to these places in Africa and Congo and finding these videos and talking to these people. To all my people in Africa, I salute you. I love you more than you know. I was told you I was in Cairo, Egypt in 2019. I know Cairo is only a small fraction of Africa, but I love y'all. We gotta start, my people in Africa. This has to be known. I want my people in Africa to start rallying up for Sami in Tokyo. Start rallying up all over again. Continue to rally up for Simon Kimbangu. And we're going to do the same over here. We're going to raise these names up for real. During the night of December 31st to January 1st, 1984, when the media announced the death of Simeon Toko, thunderclaps of virtually seismic force and torrential rain burst the skies of Luanda, and that's Luanda. It had not rained in this area for several years. Meteorologists were mystified. For 3 days, the rain fell continuously. The occurrence of this event was attributed to all the rumors surrounding the death of the great prophet. I'm going to keep on going because I know I keep on saying I hope y'all listening, but I know y'all listening. Simeon Toko was born on February 24th, 1918, in a northern village in Angola. Not long after Simeon's birth, a missionary at a Baptist missionary society based in Angola had a dream. He dreamed that a great king had been born in the region under his ministry. He decided to go looking for this baby. In 1949, Simeon Tokyo asked in his public prayer that the Holy Spirit manifest in Africa to put an end to the abuse of the colonial powers. Toko became a dedicated member of the Baptist Church in Itaga, that's Itaga. And y'all gotta excuse me, I drink my tea because as I read, it's gonna continue to get more emotional because this ain't no Marvel or DC film. This is a true story about a black man who lived, one of our ancestors. Christ came back and you didn't know about it. We weren't privileged to know that Christ came back in the name of our people worldwide. But you know now in 2022, and you will know, your kids will know now. Let me read that again. Simeon Toko was born on February 24th, 1918, in a northern village in Angola. Not long after Simeon's birth, a missionary at a Baptist missionary society based in Angola had a dream. He dreamed that a great king had been born in the region under his ministry. Kind of remind me of the three wise men, but let's keep going. He decided to go looking for this baby. In 1949, Simeon Tokyo asked in his public prayer that the Holy Spirit manifest in Africa to put an end to the abuse of the colonial powers. Toko became a dedicated member of the Baptist Church in Itaga. He formed a singing choir of 12 people. How many disciples were there? He formed a singing choir of 12 people. How many disciples did Jesus have rocking with him? Instantly, the choir became famous, and from 12 members, it grew into hundreds. At each of the choir performances, whether at their church or while visiting another church, the Holy Ghost manifested strongly. On October 22nd, 1949, Simeon Tokyo started revealing himself. Simeon Tokyo held up both hands, spread out his fingers, and told the abusive Belgian to count them. He said, and I quote, I give 10 years to the Belgians, not one more or less, to leave this country. As for the other mysterious statement made by Simeon Tokyo, 10 years later, in 1960, the Belgians were obliged to leave their rich county of Congo during a stay in Angola in 1994. A testimony of Pastor Andilio Canhandi, and that's spelled Adelino Canhandi, was collected, who was a cook at the Kakanda agricultural compound. He saw what happened, and I quote, when he was under the engine, the foreman sitting in the driver's seat started it up, which automatically activated the rotating blades of the seed sower. Simeon Tokyo's body was instantly severed in several pieces. Then the unbelievable happened. Before Can Handy and the two Portuguese accomplices, the body of Simon Tokyo recomposed itself. Simeon Toko stood up. Are you all right out there? Are you getting this? I know we had 40 minutes. I don't mind. If I need to do a part 2, I'll do a part 2. If y'all want to see a part 2, hit the like button, leave a comment, make it go viral. Let's keep on going. I think you heard it. Using a brief biblical quotation, we never left the Bible. Using a brief biblical quotation, Simeon Toko gave Pope John the 23rd to understand what the Pope had found in a note written by Lucia dos Santos was true. Let's read that again. Using a brief biblical quotation, Simeon Toko gave Pope John the 23rd to understand that what the Pope had found in the note written by Lucia dos Santos was true. Fearing who it was now living among the most disdained people on earth, the Pope contacted the Portuguese dictator Antonio de Salazar, Salazar, and I quote, "In the plane sat a Catholic priest and members of Salazar's secret police, PIDEDGS, including the pilot and co-pilot. Their mission was to fly out over the Atlantic and after about an hour distant, push Simeon Toko out of the plane into the deep sea. The moment the PIDE agents rose to subdue him and carry out their murder, Simeon Toko stood up and ordered the plane to stop. The aircraft stopped in midair. It stood still, not advancing an inch, nor rose or fell backward. The crew was stricken by panic. The priest could hardly breathe and hoarsely huffed out desperate prayers. Simeon lifted his eyes and hands toward the heaven, and after a short prayer, he ordered the plane to move again." I'm going to stop there for a moment. Now, if you didn't hear me, I told you this is a true story about a black man from the 1960s who performed the same miracles. These colonizers, these Europeans, and maybe I wouldn't be surprised if they had some black people mixed in with it. But these colonizers trying to catch this man on a plane, set him up. Sooner they trying to grab him, he ordered the plane to stop. Now remember, everything got vibration now. He ordered the plane to stop, and not the pilot. The plane stopped itself in midair with his help. Listen, I told you I'll do a part 2. When this stops, I stop. Using a brief biblical quotation, Simeon Toko gave Pope John the 23rd to understand what the Pope had found in the note written by Lucia dos Santos was true. Fearing who it was now living among the most disdained people on earth, the Pope contacted the Portuguese dictator. So listen, everybody is all about justice, right? Did we not just hear a crime that the Pope committed? Yes or no? Yes or no? Did we not just hear a crime that the Pope committed? Vatican, we are for the people, right? The Vatican, you are for the people? And to my people, listen, who may be lawyers, judges, isn't that a crime that the Vatican might need to address to the people now? Or are we just going to sit here and... Your choice. Your choice. People, I'm just a messenger of the divine Christ, that is, to wake the people up. It's your choice how you move after that, but I'm still here for you and always will be. Fearing who it was now living. Now, if this is Christ here, why are you fearing, Pope? Question. Well, he's gone now, but Vatican. It says, fearing who it was now living among the most disdained people on earth, the Pope contacted the Portuguese dictator. If this is Jesus, this is Christ come back reincarnated, why are you fearing him? Unless you're doing something wrong. In the plane sat, hold up, the Pope contacted the Portuguese dictator Antonio de Salazar. We got names. And I quote, "In the plane sat a Catholic priest and members," and all my film directors and movies, this is the visual. Make this a movie. In the plane sat a Catholic priest and members of the Salazar Secret Police, PIDE, DGS, including the pilot and co-pilot. Their mission was to fly out over the Atlantic Ocean and after about an hour's distance, push Simeon and Toko out of the plane into the deep sea. The moment the PIDE agents rose to subdue him and carry out their murder, Simeon and Toko stood up and ordered the plane to stop. The aircraft stopped in midair. It stood still, not advancing an inch, nor rose or fell backward. The crew was stricken by panic. The priest could hardly breathe and hoarsely huffed out desperate prayers. Simeon lifted his eyes and hands toward the heavens, and after a short prayer, he ordered the plane to move again. At once, the plane started moving. End quote. Another story refers to a most remarkable attempt by some astonishing misguided men to kill Simeon and Toko under dictator Antonio Salazar's order. Y'all need to Google this man after this. This man, I guess we could say killed, but he kept coming back to life with the assistance of the Pope. Justice for all, right, America? Huh? All my YouTubers and my the internet detectives, let's get on it. Let's get on it. Where y'all at? Another story refers to a most remarkable attempt by some astonishing misguided men to kill Simeon Tokyo under dictator Antonio Salazar's order. Some doctors found themselves reading the reports of his purported invulnerability. They thought they might pass the time by drilling for the secret, which seemed to protect the mysterious African man. They meant to perform an autopsy on a living human being under the pretext of removing a tumor in his chest. The doctors had Simeon Tokyo taken to the hospital. They put him on an operating table, cut a jagged mortal wound in the left side of the center of his chest, reached into his chest cavity, and pulled out his still beating heart. The aorta, aorta, and other arteries were severed by a scalpel, and his heart was removed. Simeon lay dead, his body covered with the warm blood that splashed out of his heart and chest. Simeon Tokyo came to on the operating table. To their horror and bewilderment, his heartless corpse was moving on its own volition. He opened his eyes, sat up, and looked at them. The chest wound by which they had casually murdered him gaping open. And I quote, he said, "Why are you persecuting me this way?" He said to them, "Give me back my heart." They took this man's heart out. Blood, warm blood all over him. He rose up with no heart attached, looking at him. Can you imagine, family? This is why I say, where my filmmakers at? They had to be scared shitless. This black man just... Why you persecute? Like, no heart attached. There's another picture of him. Younger picture of him. Part 3, it says, "The emergence of African avatars and the final secret of Fatima." And he goes on and he says, this is Tom Dark. "Before I continue, a correction must be made. Shortly after my last segment," he says, "with publisher, my good friend Pastor Mello, from whom I am getting most of the stories of Simon Tokyo, arrived here in Tuscan from Paris to go over the book again. We found that the Bible quotation, which seemed to indicate Simeon's Tokyo identity, has suffered many bruises in translation from French to English, as well as from footnotes from different versions of that book over the decade in which the first draft was produced. With the assistance of a local Protestant minister named Brother Godfrey Lord, who speaks in prophetic tongues and does extremely well, we spent a dozen hours a day making corrections. One of us manned the computer, the other the hard copy manuscript, and the other read aloud from one single King James Version Bible, fixing every thee and thou and comma and period. The third secret incidentally contains an excellent appendix which thumbnails a brief history of the Bible from its origins in the 4th century to the present. While it may be that Simon Tokyo is Christ's return in the fashion Christ himself related, indeed no one is required to go into the field, that is, to take trips to visit any individual anywhere said to be a Messiah. It would be unrealistic to assert that the word of God has not been altered by theologically and politically motivated men. Many times, These, however, while different editing required, were not the most important mistakes needing repair. Translation had discouraged some of the stories of Simeon himself, as one such error appeared in the absurd I presented in the last article, corrected forthwith. Simeon Toko was not in a prison and he was not abused by prison doctors when his heart was removed into horrendous desiccation. So now it says, no, he wasn't abused in there. A Portuguese doctor had been reading about Tokyo's alleged invincibility and invited several doctors from around Europe to perform the expiatory murder attempt along with him. Tokyo was taken to a local civilian hospital for this adventure behind the guise of an excuse. If there are medical records available to confirm this event independently, I do not have them now. I would like to see them. All of us involved with the project here in the States consider ourselves doubting Thomases, to say the least. Yet the story of witnesses and followers have kept our fascinations. Pastor Mello has also had his doubts and wonders and expresses them freely. Nevertheless, he pursues his journey for Simeon with the particular innocence of a man who independently follows his inner visions. Whatever they may be, indeed it was a powerful psychic vision in 1983 which occurred in a dream state over a period of days that impelled him to begin writing the book. This highly charged episode of intercommunication was his first such experience until then. He was not an untypical African expedite scrambling to make a living in Europe for which there were no opportunities at home. And it continues going on. He hadn't expected Americans to be amenable to the possibility that, for instance, the most ancient Egyptians were largely a black race, or that much of the lore and artwork regarding biblical characters were originally black had been altered by the Vatican over the centuries. Did you guys hear that? For those who have never heard of it, the event remains a major issue among Catholics throughout the Third World. You have people in the Vatican family who know this story. They do not want to tell you this story of this black man who was doing this amazing stuff in Africa. He hadn't expected Americans to be amenable to the possibility that, for instance, the most ancient Egyptians were largely a black race, or that much of the lore and artwork regarding biblical characters who were originally black had been altered by the Vatican over the centuries. He was also surprised to see that nearly everyone had come prepared with notebooks to note down what he would have to say. The guests were open and frank and did express their beliefs quite oddly for themselves, but I sat asking myself, how is a group of people having gathered over basically the news that a man has been murdered and returned to life again? And as one of the guests who had an interest in the significance of numbers pointed out, 12 people were present, the number of Christ's apostles, as well as the number of people in Simeon Toko's first choir, where all the divine trouble began in the first place. Lending a bit of the good humor, I would expect a man who knows how to get people to kill him so he can come back to life. I'm going to personalize the tone of my essay, and it keeps going down. I want to show another picture of Simeon Tokyo. There he is again. The Black Jesus. So we're going to end on that note. And at the end, Tom Dark was just saying that as far as him being tortured in that hospital, it's been said that he actually went there willingly to do these experiments, So the story of him being tortured is a little bit shifty. But everything else about the angels, everything about him working these miracles, everything about him coming back to life after being killed so many times, all that is actual factual. All that is actual factual. So now we have to realize, people, when we see the Martin Luther Kings, when we see the Malcolm X's, the Marcus Garveys, the Bobby Hemmitts, when we see all these legends, like the ones that are still living, like Bobby Hemmett, like Dr. Phil Valentine's, like all of our Masonic people, all the ones that come here and give us a message, we see that these people come here and they give us great messages and whatnot. And it's hard for us to believe. They took Dr. Martin Luther King. They took Malcolm X because they said that he was a black messiah. Us not knowing in Africa there was a black man who was doing the same work as Christ was doing. The same work. So I hope you guys continue to do your research on Simeon and Toko. True story. True story. I want you to continue to watch the Darius Corey Mystery School as well, the home of the esoteric and metaphysical knowledge. Until next time, peace and love. Realize that you are greater.